We are now live. This is the EMDEM show. I'm Coach Mike. How's it going, everybody? It is 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and so also here we are today. So we have Todd coming in here pretty quick. He is backstage. Hopefully, he's gonna be backstage right away. So we're gonna listen to Todd talk about faith, family, freedom, free enterprise, and sports. I've been looking forward to this one all day today. So hopefully, Todd buzzes in here right away. We can get him rocking and rolling. So what have you guys been up to today? What have you guys been up to? Have you had a good day? What's going on today? What time did you get up? Faith, family, free enterprise, and sports. I can't wait to discuss all this kind of stuff. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. So we'll see you guys what's happened right now. So environments and habits. We've gone over environments. We've gone over habits. The environment that you place yourself in on a daily basis. What's your home look like? Are you hanging out with the good people? Oh, I just got a little, he's here ready with us. He's here ready with us. So Todd's be coming here right away. He's waiting backstage. I'm going to go see if I can go grab him. And then we're going to talk about faith, family, and all that good stuff. So here he is. Are you there, Todd? Can you hear me? I'm going to bring him in here right away. Here we go. Todd, how's it going, buddy? Good to see you.
Hey!
What's going on? Hello, hello, hello.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's going to be a beauty.
Yeah.
So this is Todd Tolson here, folks. I'm going to let him do his intro for you. So Todd, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you've been, where you're from, what you're doing right now?
Sure, man. I currently live just south of Dallas in Texas. I've been here a little bit more than 4 years. For the last 29 years, I have been a pastor. I've been all over the country working with churches. And cool. Then about 6-7 years ago, started a company called the Church Playbook based on a book that I wrote that helps churches break through specific growth barriers and how to do that as quickly as possible. I've been married for just now 27 years, got 2 kids, 25 and 23, boy and a girl. And they still live at home. I'm very excited about that not being the case anymore at some point. But we do love having them around. And yeah, I'm just super stoked to be hanging out with you today.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. So how did this book come to be? Because I'm interested in that book, because we talked a little bit about before how you coached a football team. I think we coached a football team. You coached a football team, and then I won't tell the rest of the story. You can tell the rest of the story and how that worked with the team, and then all that kind of stuff that mixed into all of that. That's pretty interesting.
Well, the reason that I wrote the book, which by the way, when I wrote it, I didn't even really consider it a book. I really considered it more of like a field guide.
Yeah.
And I had been coaching some other pastors locally. I found myself saying the same thing over and over and over again. And so I just thought, you know what I'm going to do? Yeah. I'm just going to put it all down on paper. And the next time someone asks me for my help, I'll give it to them. And then about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years after we had started our second church, I got this idea from an article that I read saying, hey, if you want to know if someone would be good at starting a church, have them do a Kickstarter project. Yeah. And so that you're raising money for this goal. But if you run just $1 shy of your goal, you don't get any of the money and nobody's card gets charged. And the thing about being a pastor or a nonprofit leader and really even being a business leader is you have to be able to take your vision and connect it to the minds and the hearts of other people in a way that inspires them to be generous. And so I actually, 4 or 5 years into our second church plan, I was like, man, I wonder if I still got this. Can I do this? And so I actually took my little, field guide and I said, hey, buy a copy for your pastor. And so I wanted to be able to give away 100 copies. And really, by God's grace, we were able to give away almost 300 copies. Wow. And so that's when I started to realize there might be something to this little field guide that I wrote. And just the quick backstory on how that came to be. I coached youth football from 6 years old all the way up to 9th, 10th grade. And I did that for 20 years. And when we had planted our second church, it grew very, very, very quickly. I mean, in a way that even surprised me. And then, but it's just like starting a business, right? I mean, there's so much work involved. They say that the majority of the fuel used in the space shuttle is used in the launch.
Yep.
And that was certainly our experience in starting this church. And my best friend and his wife, and they happen to be kind of like my right hand guys and gals, came to me one night, and it actually blindsided me. I was not prepared for it. And they just said, man, it's too hard. We need a break. And we're just going to quietly step out the side door for a little bit. And so when people found out that my best friends were going to leave the church, it kind of gave them permission to leave too. And so we lost 40% of our attendance in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And man, I spent 10 grand that I didn't have at the time on every coach, every course, every conference to reverse the curse, only to find out that none of it worked. And here's the interesting thing is it was all really, really, really good content. But what you find out is if you've never built an engine from the ground up, you might be able to identify this piece or that part. But if you don't fully understand how that part connects to the overall engine, then you really don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, when we moved here to Texas, I bought a 1976 Chevy C20 pickup truck. And I was so big that I'm a big dude. I could fit inside the engine bay, but it's the simplest engine in the world. You need power, you need fuel, you need air, and you need spark. And if you get those 4 things, you'll get the engine to turn over. Now, but here's the most important part. Is those things need to happen in a certain order, in a certain timing. And by the way, this isn't just church. I mean, it's engines, it's churches, it's businesses, it's not for profit. You need to have the most basic of essentials operating at the right speed at the right time to get to get the flywheel going,
getting rock and rolling,
and to get the thing to take off. So I'd spent 10 grand, and this coach said, well, here's the silver bullet. And this conference said, this is the silver bullet. Well, the thing is, I was able to piece together all of the different silver bullets, but they weren't silver bullets. they were a part of a bigger engine. And so anyway, we lost 40% of our attendance in 3 weeks. I spent 3 months trying to reverse the curse. And May, June, July, August comes. August 1st is the first day of football practice. And I remember being so burnt out and so desperate. I just said, forget this, man. I give up. I quit. And I said, look, I'm going to show up on Sunday. I'm going to do the things that only I can do. And then I'm just going to, if something else needs to get done, someone else is going to have to do it. And it turns out that was the right decision to make. I just made it from a place of desperation. Went on to have our best season ever. These were some boys that I had been coaching since 4th grade. They were all 8th, 9th grade. And we went deep into the playoffs. It was our best season. And the very first Sunday in November, so our season ends in October. The very first Sunday in November, we had record attendance and I couldn't tell you why.
Wow.
And so I went away for 3 days to a little cabin out in the desert, and I started to journal. I started to write down everything that had happened that year. And I mean, and I not everyone watching this might consider themselves to be a person of faith, but you could probably imagine the kind of conversation I was having with God. And I said, Lord, you got to help me understand what happened.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized that I had inadvertently started to lead my church the same way I coached a winning football team.
Wow.
And so I spent the rest of the 3 days writing down the transferable principles between coaching a winning team and leading a growing church.
Wow.
And the funny thing, and I mean, for me, it's funny. Now it's funny.
Yeah.
Back then it wasn't funny. The funny thing is, all of the things that I had spent all this money on to learn were the transferable principles, just in the right order. So I wrote everything down.
Yeah.
And then I started, pastors would ask for my help, and I'd just say, here, read this. And it wasn't for another 2 or 3 years that we actually turned it into a business. And again, I mean, by God's grace, since the middle of 2018, we've been able to help more than 7,000 churches with the basic principles of, growing your church from 0 to 200 faster than you thought possible. And we're having fun. We've got a few dozen, coaching clients that are either in a small group. A couple of them, a handful of them, I do one-on-one. But those are sort of like next level customers. They've been with me for a long time. We've got several hundred pastors that are in a membership site, which is kind of like our basic level coaching. So we try and provide some resources to churches every month that are at that level, but we're having a blast right now, and we're getting ready to come out with our own software.
Wow.
And the thing is we want to make it free. And so we're hopefully going to be beta testing kind of like our own CRM at the end of March, and we would like to be able to get this into the hands of churches all across the country come Easter.
Wow. So I like the part where you were going through everything congregation, and then everything was like at a head, but you still kept going, because a lot of people just want to give up, they want to quit. And then just after that point, when you want to quit and you want to give up and you just kept going, then that's when you had like the huge breakthrough and everything kind of like started to happen.
Well, the funny thing is, Mike, I think everyone should quit.
Yeah.
But I quit 90% of what I was doing.
Well, yeah.
I think the magic happens when you understand what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I do on a daily, weekly basis that bring the most amount of return back to the organization.
Yeah.
That only I can do.
Yeah, you can't do everything.
You can't do everything.
And then people will pick in fill in the gaps where they need to be, and it just happens. Yeah.
I was doing everyone else's job.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
Right. So I think everybody should quit. And there's a lot that you need to quit. And I even got to the point to say, well, listen, I'm going to drop these balls, and if they actually need to get done, people can pick them up. And the ones that don't get picked up, maybe I shouldn't have been doing anyways.
Yeah, that's a profile. I've never heard that. And it's so true, because you got your core responsibilities, core capabilities, core things that you're good at that you want to do. This is what I'm doing, but you're doing all these other things way over here. It's like way too much. It's too overwhelming. It's like, so you'll just quit all these things, drop them, and then you'll focus on this. And then if other people want to pick those up, then that's like,
Right.
that's sweet.
Well, and I mean, it was, you know, that Sunday in November, we had our record attendance. And, you know, that, you know, you could end the movie right there.
Yeah.
And say, look, he overcame his challenges and he came out on top, and, you know, they carried me out, you know, like a trophy. But, you know, the funny thing is when you solve a big problem, the solution actually births more problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, like one of my problems immediately was confusion. You know, it was, okay, this is working, but I have no idea why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, someone said that if you can understand why something is working when it works, then you'll know how to fix it when it breaks.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's why I went away to the desert
Mm-hmm.
for a few days, and like I said, you know, started journaling everything that had happened that year, you know, understanding what the transferable principles were, but those solutions actually birth more problems.
Yeah.
And you know, that's why the job of a leader is never really done. And it doesn't matter what your industry is, the job of a leader is never really done.
Yeah. Just get higher quality problems. Because, yeah, problems never go away no matter what you're doing, but you just keep leveling up the problems, and solutions will come if you're looking for them. But if you keep focusing on the problem, you still have to know what the problems are. But some people will get so enamored and so put so much energy in the problem. Okay, we know what the problem is. Just like you said, if you know how it gets put together, now how all the pieces work together to come to the solution, then you'll be able to piece that all together if you can, like, know what the problem is and then come up with a solution eventually over time. Yeah.
Yes,
Problems
sir.
they never go away. They never
go away.
Some people think, like, okay, now that we've done this, there's not going to be, we fixed it, it's good, the problems are gone, they're never going to come back. But that's like, that's not how it works. No, that's not how it works here. There's always going to be a problem coming up no matter what. You can't get rid of problems because they're going to come up no matter what.
That's right.
I've never been able to figure out a way to have no problems, unless you just kind of stay in one spot and don't interact with anything, and they kind of like isolate. But still, a problem will come with.
And then that leads to stagnation.
Yeah, then your body and your brain and everything will be.
And that's another problem.
Yeah. You know,
the thing is that the people that are exponentially smarter than me, which isn't saying much, but they've never been able to figure out how to not have any problems.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it's impossible. It can't be done.
That's why we say, like, there are certain problems that are good problems to have.
Yeah,
you know,
higher quality.
You know, for example, you know, all of a sudden we had record attendance. Well, we ran out of room.
Yeah.
Well, now that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because when people drive into the church parking lot and see that there's no parking space for them, they just immediately assume that you don't have a place for them. And many times over the last 29 years, I've stood out in a parking lot and watched a family drive in the entrance and then drive out the exit because we were out of parking spaces.
Wow. So that's the reverse there. Yeah, that's a higher quality problem. People will come, if it's empty, they won't show up. Then if it's too full, they won't show up. So that's like, yeah, interesting.
Well, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you know, I've also seen people drive into a parking lot that was almost empty, and then drive out. Yeah. Because, you know, they're like, you know, is this a cult? Yeah. Did I get invited to an Amway meeting? I mean, like, what is this? You know, you know, you want to you want to be popular. You don't want to be too popular. You know, because then people won't show up to that either.
Yeah. So how could you take us back to how you started? Because I'm interested, and people might other be interested. How you got started being a pastor? How long back that? Like, how did you go into other businesses, or did you take something else for school, or did you always want to be a pastor, or how did that begin for you?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Well, I came to faith at a really early age.
Yeah.
And I was always a little bit um ahead of the curve, to the point where like I could really hold a conversation with adults when I was like 4 or 5 years old,
That's
which which
that's
which
awesome. Yeah.
didn't make me very popular with my peers.
No, no,
Um,
yeah.
but I do remember, coming to faith at a pretty early age, and because of my connection with adults, it was told to me pretty early on. People thought that I was going to become a pastor.
Hmm.
I believed that all the way up to about my 8th grade year. And my dad was in the Navy. We've been all over the country. We never really stayed in one place more than 18 to 24 months. And when you keep hitting the restart button and moving to a new state, new town, new neighborhood, it got more and more challenging to find a church family that we felt like we could really connect to. And so I actually stopped going to church end of 8th grade, beginning of 9th grade,
Yeah.
and all the way through my second year of college. I had been dating this girl for about a year and a half, and I was actually teaching guitar at
Hmm.
the high school that I had just graduated from. And my girlfriend came into my office and let me know that she started seeing another guy that had pink and green hair.
Ouch. Dude.
And I remember being more offended that she left me for a guy with pink and green hair than the
Uh,
fact that she just left me for another guy.
yeah.
And so she left my office, and I made sure the door was closed by punching the door. And I'd put my fist through many a door in my
Yeah.
high school days. Being a heavily testosterone, red-blooded dude with some anger problems. But
Mhm.
in these schools, these are steel reinforced, flame retardant
Dude.
doors,
Yeah.
and the door won that
Yeah,
day.
it's not
Um,
gonna be good, no.
I remember my first thought being "ouch."
Yeah.
Um, my
Yeah.
second thought was it's definitely broken.
Yeah.
My third thought was I make a living playing guitar. You can see I got some
Yeah.
guitars back there. I make a living with my hands. Now what am I going to do? And then the fourth thought was so loud in my head that I turned around. I thought someone else was in my office. And it was this thought that said, these are not the plans that I have for you.
Hmm.
And again, I mean, I thought someone was talking to me in my office. Well, the first Sunday in 1996, I ended up going to I got invited to church by a friend that was also at the school. And I walked I had long hair, a cast on my arm, a chip on my shoulder. And all these years later, I've got less hair,
Yeah.
but I still got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. But and so I walked into what was Magnolia Wesleyan Church that Sunday in 1996, and I was used to wooden pews and a pipe organ, and here we were like uh, uh, padded chairs and sort of like theater seating alignment. There was a drum kit on stage. And here, I mean, I was a semi-professional musician at the time, and
Yeah.
I remember thinking this tension that it was like both blasphemous
Yeah.
to have a drum kit on stage and liberating
Yeah.
to have drum kit on. So the pastor got up and started a 10-week teaching series called "How to Turn Bad Feelings into Good Ones."
Hmm.
Now, what I didn't know at the time was he was actually leading us through a verse-by-verse series on what's called the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus says, if you want a blessed life, then you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And so I sat in that seat, again, long hair, cast on my arm, chip on my shoulder. And I said, okay, God, I'm going to give you 10 weeks.
Yeah.
You've got 10 weeks to turn my life around. and I really thought at the end of 10 weeks, if nothing was different, I was going to go drive my car off a cliff. Wow. And so, 4 weeks later, my 12-week cast came off. I remember waking up one day and I was like, I think my hand is healed. And I literally drove to the hospital and I said, hey, I need you guys to x-ray my hand.
Wow.
And the doctor came back, true story, no exaggeration. The doctor came back and said, well, listen, I can't explain it. We really thought your hand was going to need 12 weeks in that cast, but we're going to go and take your cast off because you're fine.
Wow.
And on the 10th week that I was at that church, I was up on stage playing guitar in the worship team.
Wow.
I went to my first summer camp that year in 1996. And I remember the last night of camp, there was this invitation for teenagers to give their life to God, to give their life to Jesus. And there was this, I'll never forget, the 6th grade kid, there's like all these camp counselors surrounded by 20 kids. And I mean, side note, the funny thing is, I actually, and I was 19 years old, and we had to sign a contract that we would have no spiritual influence over the teenagers until you were the age 25. At 25, they thought you were a real adult. At 19, they're like, listen, man, you're going to screw these kids up even more than they're already screwed up. And so I remember standing in the back of the room, and again, all the camp counselors are just thronged by all these teenagers, and there's this one 6th grade kid off by themselves. And I remember having the thought of like, I wonder if I could help. And so I, of my own volition, broke the terms of my contract and fumbled through the worst prayer you ever did hear with this 6th grade kid. Yeah. And I remember walking back to my cabin that night, and I'm like, God, I hope that took. And again, I mean, I'm not the kind of, I mean, there's probably, I can now count on less than 2 hands the times that I feel like I'd audibly heard from the Lord. But that was one of them. And it really confirmed and affirmed the call to ministry that I had all the way back when I was 5 years old. And my mom swore I was going to be the next Billy Graham. So yeah, 19 years old. I mean, I went back into one of my pastor's offices that Monday, and I said, look, my mom told me I was going to be Billy Graham when I was 5 years old. I just had this experience at summer camp. I really feel like I've got a lot of lost time to make up for. What do I do? And the pastor picked up, and this is back when phones had cords on them. This is the late 1900s. And he picked up and dialed this number, and he said, Doc, I'm going to send the most dynamic worship leader you've ever met over to you right now. And hangs up the phone, takes out a Post-it note, writes an address, gives me the Post-it note, and says, they're expecting you. Go. I had no idea what he had done. And so I pulled out my Thomas Brothers guide, which, again, this is like pre-MapQuest days, and drove over to this college campus. And I just went up to the front office and said, hey, I'm Todd. I was told to come here. And the lady looked like she'd seen a ghost. She's like, oh, we've been expecting you. And so she walks me to, they start putting me at the front of all these lines and signing me up for classes, Bible classes.
Yeah.
And then they sit me down in Doc's office. He was the music director for the school. And he said, hey, we hired someone to be the worship leader for the college. And he just quit yesterday and school starts tomorrow. And he says, so here's what we're going to do. We've paid for your first semester. And you're going to start leading worship Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at chapel.
Wow.
And but the thing, I'd never played and sang at the same time.
Yeah.
I was a little guitar virtuoso, but
Yeah.
I'd never sung before, and so I learned real quick. But yeah, that's really kind of how it all started for me. I'd started working with teenagers. I did that for a long time, for about 10 years. Started my first church in 2005, which was an abysmal failure. We can talk about that. Swore I would never do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to Washington State, where I did more youth ministry. And we went from 20 kids to over 1,000 in 6 months, which I would not wish on my worst enemy. Moved back to San Diego in 2007 and went back to the church that I had originally been on staff at, but didn't want to go on staff. I just wanted to go to the church. Got sort of tricked into going back into ministry, did another few years there. We started our second church in January of 2011. And then I thought I retired from ministry in June of 2022. We moved here to Texas. And I'm sorry, June 2021, I think it may have been. Yeah.
During COVID 2021, I think.
So we moved to Texas December 2020. I was actually flying back and forth to the church. And so I had actually no designs on starting another church. The challenge is the town that we're in is pretty small. There's only a couple of churches. And so we started a church in January 2023, and that grew very, very quickly. I handed that off to the associate pastor in March of 2024 and thought I retired again. And I actually, and it's a fun story, but I got in touch with a tiny little church in this town. They're all in their 70s and 80s, and they've been a congregation for about 20 years, and they're in a building in my town that literally nobody knows is there. It is an actual church building. It's just at the end of a residential cul-de-sac. And unless you live on that street, you don't know the church exists. So the very first time I had breakfast with the pastor and his associate, they offered me the building at the very first breakfast. And they said, look, our number one concern is that we're going to die. And because, I mean, the pastor said to the associate's 83, he says, we're going to die and we don't have anyone to hand this off to.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, we're actually taking all of the principles that we wrote in the church playbook, and we're beginning to apply them in this church. And we're already, I mean, it's funny. We've already grown by 50%. We're not even trying. But that's what we're doing right now.
Wow. Yeah. You need to get that playbook in every church's hands on the entire planet.
We're doing our best.
Yeah. Cause as far as I can tell or remember here, like attendances are kind of getting lower, not higher, unless I'm wrong. Yeah. Church attendance is going down, or is it going up, or I guess it depends on where you are. Yeah.
It is the average size church now, and people have a hard time believing this, but the average size church back in 2019, so before COVID,
yeah,
the average size church had 76 people in it. And the thing is, here in the United States, you hear about guys like Joel Osteen,
yeah, where you got the whole
T.D. Jakes or Stephen Furtick, and these guys have 10, 20, 30,000 people coming to church. They really drive the average up.
Yeah, yeah. If you take those big guys and you throw them out, then yeah, that's where you get the real number. Because yeah, those are yeah.
So there are, I mean, there's probably a couple few thousand mega churches in the out of 300,000 churches in the United States. But yeah, so I we don't even have any real numbers yet as to what the church actually looks like post COVID.
Hmm.
Those are still coming in, but I would say it's probably even half,
Hmm.
maybe a little more than half of what it was back in 2019. We
Yeah,
certainly have not recovered
yeah.
our post COVID numbers.
Hmm. And it seems like Christianity is always under attack and scrutiny. That's the only religion that they want to kind of throw out, and everybody else seems it's like they're all inclusive with these everything else except, but that's for a reason too, I think. But yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the new atheists, as they're called, guys like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, guys in that, Ricky Gervais, Christopher Hitchens, who died a few years ago. They were actually, against all religion, not even
Hmm.
just Christianity. And I mean, and now even Richard Dawkins, he thinks that Islam is actually the most dangerous religion in the world right now.
Hmm.
Um, but then, I think people don't have a problem with quote unquote religion until it affects their life.
Yeah. The
We
bad
all
experiences. People have had
we
bad experiences, and
well,
they
for sure,
yeah, and then
for
they
sure.
attach the bad experiences to like the whole thing, and I think that's why people that are against certain religions, they've either had a bad experience themselves personally, or they heard somebody, or they saw it on the news, or there's violence attached to it, or abuse attached to it, and then it just all gets blanketed, and that's
Well,
yeah.
it's I've literally never met anybody that's had a problem with Jesus Christ.
No, yeah, because yeah,
But
yeah, definitely,
it's the people who say they follow him they have a problem with,
yeah.
and listen, for good reason. I'm not even discounting
Yeah,
the reason.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
People talk about church hurt,
Mhm.
that they had a bad experience at a church and therefore they've been hurt by the church. And
Yeah.
and the truth of the matter is it's really not church hurt, it's people hurt,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
church isn't the building,
Yeah.
it's the people inside of it. And there I mean, there's some ornery rascals out there, to put it
Mhm.
very mildly,
Yeah.
that, gosh darn it, they've hurt me too. And
Mhm.
by the way, it was religious people that killed Jesus.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
he's been hurt by the church too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. But it's very interesting 'cause, I've been, well, I was a believer from a young age, and I just pray, but I didn't know who I was praying to exactly. I didn't really
Sure.
read the Bible when I was a kid, but we went to church, and I like going to church because I got to spend time with my friends, but the sermon was kind of boring. But it was Lutheran churches I think I went to, mostly Lutheran, and then some Greek Orthodox that was in a different language. But
Yeah.
I'm interested to know because we had like the traditional, the organ, like you said, with the pipes going up. There was no bands playing because that was new to me when I got introduced to that. When did like the band for worshiping instead of singing the hymns when it was traditional? When did the bands start to kind of come into the worship to make it more appealing for the praise and worship time? When did that start?
I mean, I think our best answer is going to be sometime in the late 60s is probably when it started. Certainly early 70s in what was called the Jesus Revolution,
Yeah.
which came out of a church called Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa, California, with a guy named Chuck Smith. And Chuck had an unusual gift to be able to connect with the hippies and the surfers, and as they gave their life to Jesus, they just took their style of music and just wrote Jesus songs with it.
Yeah.
And so that started showing up in the church, certainly more and more in the 80s, and then really kind of peaked, in what we called the seeker sensitive movement in the late 80s, early 90s. So, but the question that you ask, I mean, it's like, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Because at one point, the pipe organ was blasphemous.
Yeah, I guess, yeah,
I mean,
depending
it's like,
on how far.
how far back do you want to go with music style? I mean, because we can go back to the Gregorian chant if we want to.
Yeah.
So there's the principle is that we are to worship God in both spirit and truth.
Mm-hmm.
But the style of worship is not outlined in the Bible, and for good reason, because if you were to go to a small little church in Uganda or Nigeria, somewhere in Africa, they've got their own style of worship that would sound nothing like, what we do here in the States. And, the thing is, God likes variety.
Yeah.
There are 80,000 species of beetle. God's always been a God of variety. And so as long as our worship of him is coming from a place of, purity, the motive to connect with
motives,
God.
intentions. Yeah, your motives, your intentions, your heart, your purity.
Yeah, all of that. He's happy to receive it, and it doesn't matter what the style of music is, if it's coming from the right place.
Yeah, and only God will know that, or only the individual person will know that, like the internal motives, intentions, and because no one can. I believe that only God knows that, and the person that's doing it are the only two people can try and that's for people. You never really know with people's intentions and motives, because people can judge this, that, and the other. It's like, why is that guy doing that, or why is she doing this? It's like, just gives something people to talk about and gossip about, and it's interesting.
Yeah,
very, very interesting. But I've always been like, because I started getting into faith a lot more in the early 2000s when I kind of got away from everything, and then I started reading. Because I would think everybody, if I were to give one piece of advice, is like to like build that relationship with Jesus. Build that relationship would be the one piece of advice I'd give but people, they have to come on their own terms and their own timing, and some people never do, and some people do. And I don't understand why, if there's a God, why wouldn't you want to build a relationship with him? Maybe they don't even know that it's possible that you can build a personal relationship with a God if they believe he does or doesn't exist. But it's like, to believe that you can build a relation, like a personal relationship. Would that be one of the biggest things that people would need to know if they were even thinking about it?
Well, I come at it sort of from the middle. It's very, very easy. First of all, you got to understand the Bible is not a science book. Now, that doesn't mean that the Bible is wrong about the claims that it makes, but as a person of science, you might say, hey, I really believe in the theory of evolution, and I would fine, whatever.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. And we look at the different ages that the earth has gone through, and so if someone doesn't want to believe in a 6 literal day creation, I don't fault them for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a challenge with that because, I mean, first of all, let me just be Captain Obvious for a second and say, the Bible was not originally written in English.
Yeah.
Right. So the Old Testament, 90% of the Old Testament is written in ancient Hebrew. So which was the language of the Israelites. Then towards the end of the Old Testament, about 10% of the Old Testament is written in the Aramaic language, which was the trade language of the day. So books like Daniel and Ezekiel, those are written in Aramaic. Now, 100% of the New Testament is written in the Greek language. Because, in between the time of the Old and the New Testament, there was a guy named Alexander the Great. And he conquered the known world, and the world went through a Hellenistic period where Alexander wanted everybody to eat Greek, which, I love gyros. Eat Greek, dress Greek. So the New Testament was actually written in a language that everybody understood back then. Now, when you go to Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, which tells the creation story, the Hebrew word for day. So, it says, on the first day,
Yeah.
Light was created. On the second day,
Yeah.
well, when we think of day here in our English language, we think of a 24-hour period of time.
Yeah.
But the word for day in Hebrew, it's the word yom. It's the word yom, yom. It just means an extended period of time.
Yeah, there's no way, because we had to create. There's no way we can even
Mike, the sun wasn't even created till the fourth day.
Yeah.
So it would not be wrong. Now, do I believe that God is big enough and powerful enough to create the universe and everything in it in 6 literal 24-hour period? Of course I do. Mm-hmm. Did he do that? I don't know. Nobody I know was there. Okay.
It's too much for anybody to even to be able to handle how you can to create planets and stars and because that's why he's God, because it's like we as a human being have a little bit, but not even close, not even remotely.
So this is why I come at it from the middle.
Yeah.
We have historical eyewitness accounts outside of the Bible that say Jesus of Nazareth was a real person,
mm-hmm.
that he lived and did miracles. I mean, people in other cultures outside of the Bible said that, hey, for some reason, when Jesus got around people that were blind, they all of a sudden weren't blind anymore. We know for a fact that he died on a Roman cross, and that there were over 500 eyewitnesses at one time
mm-hmm.
to the resurrected Jesus. What makes it peculiar is that Jesus said all of this was going to happen before it did.
Before it all happened, yeah. Yeah.
So if a man is able to predict his own death and resurrection and then pull it off, I need to pay attention to what this guy has to say. So there's so much historical evidence, and we have more historical text that backs up the claims of the New Testament of the Bible
mm-hmm. than
we have for any other literature in antiquity. So I come at it from the middle. Let me just be so bold as to say this. If anybody can disprove the resurrection of Jesus Christ, then the entire faith of Christianity is a house of cards.
Yeah. Didn't Lee Strobel try to set out to do this? Like he tried to and then he ended.
Lee is one of several men and women that, came up from an atheistic upbringing and point of view. Lee's story is that both he and his wife were atheists when they got married.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes Lee's story very interesting is that he was a criminal investigative journalist. And his wife started going to church. And she gave her life to the Lord, which really bent Lee out of shape.
Yeah, because she was changing. Yeah,
she was changing, and he kind of felt like it was a bait and switch.
Yeah,
he's like, hey, you were one way when we got married, and he's, I didn't sign up for this. So out of it, from a place of resentment, he decided to apply his criminal investigative journalist skills and training to disprove Jesus Christ, the cross, and the resurrection. And as a result of his investigation, he became a Christian.
Yeah.
Josh McDowell is another one. And I'm actually friends with his son, Dr. Sean McDowell. It seems like everyone that goes, here's why it's hard to do, Mike, is you have to strip away your presuppositions going in, and you have to go into, just like if you were going to be on a jury.
Yeah.
You have to leave your biases at the door and take in all the information.
Yeah.
And then make a decision.
Yeah.
And the people that are willing to do that 100% of the time come away from an investigation like that and say, listen, either Jesus was a liar.
Yeah. Crazy.
So
or he's telling the truth. Yeah.
So if he was a liar, it means he knew he wasn't the Messiah. He was, or he was a lunatic. Like he actually believed he was the Son of God, but obviously he wasn't. And in either case, he died for something that wasn't true. Or he really is the Lord.
Yeah.
And so C.S. Lewis, the prolific author, best known for the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
He sort of coined that liar, lunatic, or Lord phraseology. But at the end, and so here's the thing. I say this every year. And I'll say this to the people that are watching. If you can present an academic, scholarly, peer-reviewed paper that disproves the resurrection of Jesus Christ, I will personally give you 10 grand.
Yeah,
I say it every year.
Yeah, no one. It can't be done.
So if you need the money that bad, and you're willing to put in the effort, please do it. Because the thing is I personally don't have time for fairy tales, Mike. And I have staked my life on the truth of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But but I've done the work.
Yeah.
I've done the work because I'm like, have I given my life to nothing? Have I given my life for a lie? Have I given my life to a fairy tale? Because I would quit today if someone were able to disprove the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because I would just be wasting my time and everybody else's.
Yeah, I just find it very interesting because I deal with most of the people that I deal with. They don't believe, or they might believe or they don't believe, but they're not like true believers. And I am, and they have to come on their own. They have to be able to come on their own and question. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's the way I'm pictured, because it's like you can't try to convince them. You're not trying to convince them of anything. You're not trying to like force them or convert them. I believe they have to come on their own and say, okay, are you there? I need your help. I surrender. Like whatever, however they go about like making that connection. And I don't know why everybody doesn't do that. Maybe they do.
Well, but I think you said it right. I think people have to come on their own. And when do people do that? They do it in times
the
of
lowest
tragedy,
or
transition.
Yeah.
And that's when you're able and willing to question your own beliefs.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, hey, I thought if I were a good person,
yeah, everything would be okay.
Then she would have stayed married to me. And then I was a good person, and so what other beliefs am I believing that aren't necessarily true? And I think in times of tragedy or transition, people are most open.
Yeah, that's true. Totally.
To hearing the truth of God.
Yeah. But because I've thought about this too, if you flip that around, if God comes in human form, and just for you and I, as a personal relationship with someone. So if I only come to you to ask you for something, because this is what people do. If I only in my experience, I could be wrong. So we have a relationship, you and I, we have a relationship, and I only want to call you, I only want to talk to you when I need something from you. Like, is that like a relationship? Is that like a real, truly loving relationship? So I'm only coming to you, Todd, when I want something or I need something, or if I'm in a bad situation, Todd, I need this from you now. It's like, so I think that's how people treat God. It's like, okay, God, I've never talked to you before when things are going good, and thanked you for just my life, and thank you for my circumstances, and thank you for putting me here on the planet. I've never thanked you before. I've been grateful just for me existing, but I'm only going to come to you when I need something from you, or if I'm in down and out. So I think that too, because people are coming from a place of negativity, people are coming from a place of desperation. And if they have that relationship, even if you're having a human relationship, I should call you every once in a while to see how you're doing, and thank you for being my friend, and thank you for like just being there for me and grateful for you as a human being. And if people, I think they did that with God on a regular basis, then it might be a little bit better.
And I don't think you're wrong. I think one of the reasons that I agree with you is because if you look at you and me, we're peers. We're good. We're buddies. We're equals. But if you look at it from God's perspective, he doesn't see us as peers.
No, obviously not.
He doesn't see us, he doesn't see us as like, he never looks at us and says, man, when are you going to get your act together? I think that God sees us the way I saw my kids when they were toddlers.
Yeah.
They made a mess.
Yeah.
All they did was cry about it. They could never use their big boy or big girl words.
Yeah.
But my love for them was so big. That you just can't help but pick them up.
Yeah.
Clean them off.
Yeah.
pat them on the back and say it's going to be okay, and then you clean up their mess.
Yeah.
And then you put them back down. I think when God looks at us, I think he's got this. He never looks at it like, when are you going to learn, Todd? Todd, you've made the same mistake over and over, and I just keep swooping in and rescuing. When are you going to learn, Todd? And I think from God's perspective, he already knows. Mike, he already knows it's going to take me 547 times to learn my lesson.
Yeah.
And when I make the same mess, when I make the same mistake, he picks me up and he says, that was 346 times, only 201 more times to go. Good job.
Yeah, that goes for the forgiveness. How many times should I forgive someone once they do me wrong? 7 times 7. It's like it picks, right. Like pretty much every time. Yeah.
So but the thing is you're right. I mean, at some point you would think that we would grow up and mature in our own faith and our own life to question our own selves. It is the only time I'm ever going to God when I need something.
Yeah. And then that goes to the 2 foremost commandments when they ask, with all the laws and the rules and everything in the book, how do we, like, there's so many in there to keep, like, what are the 2? To love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, to love your neighbor as yourself. If you put all those together, if you can figure out what that means to love God and to love yourself and to love your neighbor, once you put that together, then that's even interesting too. What that means to love God is to follow his commands, but then you can't be perfect following the commands because you're a sinner and you're going to make mistakes, but then that goes to motives and intentions and purification of yourself. And it's very interesting.
Well, Ephesians 1:4 says that before he laid the foundation of the earth, God chose you to be holy in his eyes without a single fault. Before the creation of the world and everything in it, he already knew every dumb decision, every bad choice, every mess you were going to make. He already knew. And he still thought you were a good idea.
Yeah.
So like I said, I agree with you. I think as a matter of our own maturity, we do need to take inventory of, like, is my connection to God only when I'm in trouble?
Yeah, transactional. Is it a relationship or just transactional?
That's a great word for it.
Need something.
That's a great word for it.
Because with a relationship with another human being, is that human being relationship, you only go to that person when you need something from them, or do you have a real relationship? You go out and do this, and you're doing this, and you're having activities together, and you call them just to check up on them, to the human being relationship, as opposed just to calling this person, this person will help me out, I'm going to call them because I need something from them. Yeah, the human being relationship to relationship there. Yeah. That's interesting. Well, I don't know if we can go. We can talk a lot about a whole bunch of different topics, but because I could talk or ask questions forever about all this stuff, and you can come to some conclusions here on Earth with the human being interaction, then country to country, and faith to faith, religion to religion, and then and then sport, how that relates in sport and culture to, like, beliefs and humans, and how we all interact with each other and all the different faiths and cultures and belief systems and this gender stuff. But we won't get into all of that, but I appreciate the conversation. I love this conversation.
Yeah, man. I'm glad we're able to hang out today and chat about it.
Yeah. So if people wanted to, like, get to know you a little bit more, or they wanted to look at your book, the Church Playbook, or if they wanted to, like, work with you, I got something on here, I think I put this, how would they go to one of your websites?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're a pastor, a church leader, you can certainly go to the churchplaybook.com. I've got some other business stuff that you can get at toddtolson.com. If you want to see me in my just everyday natural habitat, you can just find me on Facebook. Because what's interesting is I have an avatar in mind when I post on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'm very relational with my approach to social media, but I don't. You will see. I mean, there are guys that are in my industry in the church growth space that just on their personal profile, I mean, all they're doing is they're talking to pastors, they're talking to churches. I don't do that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even really deal a whole lot with the mechanics of growing a business, but a discerning eye will see what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So I do have a very specific strategy on when I post, how I post, what I post. But yeah, if you want to see me in my everyday natural habitat, come find me on Facebook and say hi.
Because that's interesting too, because people, I don't want to label all people, but people would think that because churches are businesses too, they have operations, they need a building, they need electricity, they need water, they got to hire employees, and they have to put that all together for the fact that, and then they can go out and help a whole bunch of different groups within the community. So people don't realize all of those different things too. Sometimes they just think, oh, where's my money going to go? Where am I putting it into programs? But yeah, it's a whole different spoke of thing that everything has to work together in everything. Yeah, definitely. Because there's the business of the church and the spirituality of the church, and there's a whole bunch of different things that go along with that, which is interesting. But we won't get into any of that. All right, cool. Well, yeah, I appreciate this conversation. It's been, again, I could talk hours on all this stuff because there's lots of stuff to unpack and talk about. But
well, you'll just have to have me back on the show again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Because yeah, there's so many different ways you can go, and then but that's okay. It's been great talking to you. And what is it? Thursday today, March 20th. It's almost April. Springtime soon.
It's going by too fast.
Yeah, and I like all the stuff in the back there, Iron Man and Hogan, and got your book and all that other good stuff there. That's pretty cool. We won't get into that either. We'll be here forever. We'll be here all day. All right. Thanks, Todd. And I appreciate it. Have yourself a sweet day.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Talk to you later. That's it.